So Tyrone and Kerry in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship semi-finals this weekend. Here we go. Once again, Kerry and Tyrone in another All-Ireland semi-final. And the other semi-final, after obviously Mayo beat Dublin, and Mayo waiting in the wings now for the All-Ireland finalists who will be joining them in the All-Ireland final. Will it be Kerry or will it be Tyrone? And I suppose a lot of people will have Kerry as the favourites to win this game. And look, listen, I do want to make perfectly clear, first of all, I know in a number of recent podcasts and videos, it may have looked like I was kind of dismissing Tyrone, that they didn't have a chance, and I was kind of saying, oh, well, it's going to be Kerry they're playing in the final. Like, a lot of those videos were recorded around the time where it looked like Tyrone were not going to be playing in the All-Ireland final, and I'm certainly not dismissing Tyrone. I actually think Tyrone have a serious chance in this game, and I think the way that Kerry play, it might actually suit Tyrone, because Tyrone will probably drop into a defensive shell. They'll allow Kerry to break their cornerbacks forward, the likes of Tom O'Sullivan, the likes of Brian O'Buglock, and whether it's Gavin White or Paul Murphy venturing forward as well. I do actually think that we could see Tyrone being very well compact defensively and then breaking with pace, whether it's Conor McKenna, Tiernan McCann, or maybe even Colin McShane gets a start as well. Like, I think that could cause all sorts of problems for Kerry in this game. So I don't want to dismiss Tyrone. I do think they have a serious chance. I will say that I do feel like personally that Kerry will win this game. And I do think that this is a huge opportunity now for Kerry, not just to win this All-Ireland, but to dominate. I mean, look, listen, I think Kerry would have beaten Dublin quite comfortably anyways. I think Mayo will be a much tougher test in the final for Kerry now having seen what Dublin have brought to the table. But I think at the start of the year, at the start of the season, I think a lot of people still had the Dubs to win the All-Ireland, including myself. Obviously, that won't be happening this year. So it is a chance for Kerry just to win this game, go on winning All-Ireland. And I think if they do it, I think they have the potential to go on and really dominate the All-Ireland scene. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to win 4 or 5 in a row or anything like that, because I don't think they will, but I do think they have a real potential to dominate the All-Ireland scene and to be the best team in the country for many years to come. And, you know, maybe they might win the All-Ireland here, win 2 or 3 along the way potentially as well. I think they've a serious potential, but they need to go out and do it on the pitch, and they need to go out and beat Tyrone. And Tyrone will be a very tough test, because Tyrone, like, when it's got tough for them, when they've had to dig deep, they found a way to do it. They done it against Monaghan, like when they were under the cosh light on in the second half, they found a way to win that game. It was the same against Donegal as well. I think Brian Dooher and Fergal Logan have been brilliant so far at just finding, you know, the different tactics in different games, like pushing all Sludden further up the pitch when Donegal went down to 14 men. I thought was very impressive as well, because he's a brilliant attacker and brilliant at getting forward on the ball, and brilliant at kicking points as well. So I think Tyrone do have a chance. I would expect Kerry, like what I said before, I think they're going into this game with a lot of potential, and very excited for this one.
Well, nowadays you got to have that, because people nowadays.
Before we get straight into the podcast, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Declan Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star Championship Journey. It's a series of GAA team children's books written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. You can check it out in the link in the description down below, of course, as well. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club, recently formed but promising GAA team. The book is now available in Easons and all good bookshops, so check it out in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. My name is Aaron, and this is the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship semi-finals preview and prediction for Tyrone and Kerry facing off in this weekend's All-Ireland Senior Football Championship semi-final. A huge game, and thank God the game is going ahead. Obviously, there was a lot of doubt over this game. You know, in the past couple of weeks, obviously Tyrone have had multiple COVID cases and close contacts and whatnot. So, I mean, it will be interesting to see whether they still have some players affected going into this game. You know, maybe, hopefully, you know, fingers crossed that they can feel their best team, because you wouldn't want a situation where more players ended up catching it or anything like that, because I think we want to see both teams have their best players out on the pitch. You know, and that would be a fantastic spectacle. I suppose for Kerry, like, it's been a long wait for this All-Ireland semi-final. Like, you're nearly going back a month since they would have played their All-Ireland Championship or their Munster final against Cork. And Kerry haven't been tested this year, and that's going to be a real sort of interesting one for Kerry. I mean, they really did dismantle Cork, Clare and Tipperary very, very comfortably very, very impressive stuff from a Kerry point of view. But will it be a cause for concern that they haven't had a significant test like Tyrone have? Tyrone, like what we said before, have been under the cosh against Monaghan. It certainly wasn't easy for them. It was a tough test, and certainly they had to be in that game. So certainly from a Tyrone point of view, I mean, it's a massive, massive game. And like what I was saying there, like they have been under the cosh this year. They've had to dig deep against Donegal, and something we haven't seen from a Kerry point of view. So I do think that'll be an interesting point of view going into this final, and it definitely will be something worth considering because, you know, like what we said before, like it'd be very interesting to see what happens with Kerry if they're 2 or 3 points down going into the final 10 to 15 minutes, because we haven't seen that this year from Kerry. We really haven't. And like they have a lot of young players in there. Like a lot of those players played in the 2019 All-Ireland final. They do have a certain element of experience, but like when the going gets tough, will Kerry have what it takes to step up? Personally, I think they will. But we haven't seen it yet, and that is going to be an interesting question. And if Tyrone can keep this a tight game, if they can keep it a close game, they might just have a real chance going down the home stretch, and maybe we could see a situation where Kerry panic, because I do think the pressure is all on Kerry. I think Tyrone are 7-1 outsiders to win this game, which is quite crazy odds. Really, I wouldn't have put Tyrone that far off winning this game. So I mean, Kerry have a huge chance, massive favourites to win the All-Ireland now as well. A lot of expectation on them to go and do it, and you know there's pressure on Kerry, and I mean there was pressure in the Munster Championship, but I think they were so good they didn't have to worry about that. But maybe in this game, if the going gets tough, it's certainly going to be an interesting watch. Now, there will, if all goes well, be a live watch-along stream on GAA Fan TV for the Kerry and Tyrone game. And just to clarify, I'm not showing the game. I'm in no way showing the game, because if I was to show the game, there would be copyright issues, and the channel would be taken down, or the video would be taken down, the stream will be stopped and whatnot. So I won't be showing the game, but as you are probably all very well aware, the game I'm pretty sure is on RTE. It might even be on Sky as well. GAA Go if you're abroad, because I'll actually be abroad as well. I'll be flying back from Ibiza, so I'll be back around 3 o'clock or so. So hopefully the live watch along stream will go ahead. We'll have to wait and see what happens there, but I won't schedule anything on the channel, but do just keep an eye on the channel for about half an hour before throw in, or a couple of minutes before throw in, and we may go live. We'll see what happens anyways. Should be back in Ireland, about 10-15 or about 20 minutes to half an hour before throw in, so it might be a tight squeeze, but we'll see what happens anyway. Certainly if I'm back in time, I will do the live watch along stream. And obviously with the success that the Dublin and Mayo one brought, although Dublin did lose, which wasn't good from my point of view, the stream did do very well. So I do want to try and do watch along streams for the remainder of the senior games anyways. So do stay tuned for that. But anyways, let's get into the preview. So we'll move on over to tacticalboard.com, where we can look at the game in further detail, look at the key matchups, and break down all the key scenarios that might happen in the game. Now, I did actually record this video once before, and I actually forgot to share my screen, and that's why things might look a little bit messy. So I've actually had to go back and record the entire video again, which is very frustrating, but we will do this again anyways and break down what I think will happen in the game between Kerry and Tyrone. And I suppose one of the things I was discussing quite early on really was that, like what I said at the start of this video, that Kerry, they love getting their cornerbacks forward, they love getting their wing backs forward, they love getting players forward, and that could be a hindrance for Tyrone, but it could also be a benefit to them as well, because if Kerry have a situation where Tom O'Sullivan's venturing forward, Brian O'Buglock's venturing forward, you've got Mike Breen getting forward maybe as well, Paul Murphy, it leaves space here. And look, listen, I'm sure a lot of the Tyrone players are going to track back. Like what I said before, I do think Tyrone will be quite defensive in this game and get men back. They'll probably leave 2 players up, whether that's, Conor McKenna, we've seen done a bit of tracking back, so maybe if Colin McShane starts, he'll be around here. Now, I have put Colin McShane in here. I know it's probably unlikely that he starts, but I've put him in here because if Tyrone are going to come past Kerry, I would expect that he'll have some sort of impact in the game, whether it's coming off the bench or even starting. So they could leave a 2-man full forward line, and maybe Kerry will push David Moran back or Jeremy O'Connor when they're getting their wing backs and cornerbacks forward. So, but it could leave spaces, and it could leave space for Tyrone to attack on the counter attack. And like, if Tyrone can win the ball back, if they can force those turnovers, whether it is Mark Bradley or Noel Sludden, even Matty Donnelly maybe even tracking back, and they break with pace, they have the potential to hurt Kerry, because we've seen in the game versus Cork for Kerry in that first quarter and the first 15 minutes, Kerry were pushing far too many players forward. They were leaving spaces in behind. And I remember even I tweeted about it, and I looked very silly, unfortunately, after it. I was saying that Cork could have an absolute field day if they played their cards right. In the end, they didn't at all. Their defence collapsed and they were just useless going forward, unfortunately, for the remainder of the game. But if Tyrone could, adopt that similar approach to what Cork had, play with that same intensity, I mean, look, listen, they might not be able to sustain it for the full 70 minutes, but they can try their best, and it might force Kerry into mistakes, force Kerry into errors, because so far Kerry have been absolutely flawless this year. But Tyrone, if they can force those turnovers and break on the attack, Peter Hart, as well, as we know, loves to venture forward. If they can break getting forward, it might just create goal opportunities and points as well, and that could be an area of the pitch where Tyrone really do potentially capitalise on Kerry and potentially exploit them, and that could be, if Tyrone are going to have a chance in this game, I feel like it's going to be from breaking from the back with pace, and I think that could be one of the main ways they win this game. And the team lineups I've put out here are very much the same team that both sides lined up in their last game. So for the Kerry side against Cork, this was the team that they played. And for the Tyrone team against Monaghan in that Ulster Championship final, this was more or less the team they started with. Obviously, I've put Cathal McShane in there, like I said before, because I do think he'll have a big impact in the game. Tiernan McCann could be another player that could come in. He missed the last game because of COVID, obviously the Monaghan game, but he was brilliant against Donegal coming off the bench, and he could certainly be a player that could really make an impact. And yeah, like what I was saying before, like a way that I do expect Kerry to really hurt this Tyrone side is by breaking forward, is by getting players forward. Brian O'Buglock likes to venture forward, Tom O'Sullivan as well. Sean O'Shea likes to drop more around here into the midfield, and Paddy Clifford obviously has been one of the footballers of the year so far. He's been an all-star footballer, all-star form, and certainly probably going to win an all-star if Kerry do come through this game and go on to win an All-Ireland. Like Kerry have been brilliant, and Paddy Clifford in particular has been fantastic. I mean, reminds me so much of Kieran Kilkenny, the way he just picks up the ball. He's that playmaker, that link man. He's able to spot a pass in front of him. He's able to spot the players around him. He can kick a point as well if he needs to. And he's just brilliant. He does track him back. And he's just such a brilliant team player, and probably been maybe what Kerry have actually been missing over the past couple of years. You think back to 2019, for example, in that final, they had a lot of very good attacking players that were brilliant at forward running, like Stephen O'Brien and Sean O'Shea and David Clifford as well. Paul Gainey obviously tends to leave himself forward. He's the man to get the goals, or a bit of a poacher and whatnot. But they didn't really have a player like what the Dubs have had in previous seasons, and Kieran Kilkenny and Noel Scully, or you even think of Tyrone with Matty Donnelly, who probably does something similar. Paddy Clifford is that man. Like, he's that man that gets on the ball, links it all together, and he's been absolutely brilliant. And it will be interesting to see how Tyrone manage to deal with him, whether it is Michael McKernan that goes on him. Maybe they put Padraig Hampsey on him because he'll maybe stick with him. But I do think another interesting point of view worth considering is David Clifford, because I mean, David Clifford didn't score from play against Cork in the last game, and I think a lot of people are expecting David Clifford to really click into gear in this game, because like, you couldn't imagine Kerry going on to win an All-Ireland and David Clifford having a quiet enough championship. I know he scored 1-6 against Clare, and he was very impressive in that game, scored a goal late on, obviously got a goal against Tip as well. But like, for him to have a quiet championship and Kerry to go all the way, I just couldn't see it happening. And I think Clifford had a brilliant game against Tyrone 2 years ago, and to be honest with you, I would expect him to step up in this game. I would expect him to deliver. I think what a top class forward he is, and I am expecting to see a bit of magic. But whether it is Padraig Hampsey going up against him, I think Padraig Hampsey's been brilliant for Tyrone so far this year, one of the best defenders in the championship so far, without doubt. And I think Hampsey going up against Clifford would definitely be a tasty matchup indeed. But for Clifford, for both Cliffords really, but for David in particular, I'm expecting to see a big game from him in this game. Sean O'Shea is another player as well that loves to drift around the midfield area, and of course that half forward line. In similar fashion to Paddy Clifford, he's the link man in the team. He's able to spot a couple of passes around him, but he has those drive and runs as well, where you can weave past one or two players and end up comfortably slotting it into the back of the net or over the bar, and he just causes havoc every time he's on the ball. But I do think he'll need to be patient on the ball, because like what I said before, I think Tyrone will retract into a bit of a defensive shell, and like Sean O'Shea will need to pick up the ball around here, and same for Jack Barry if he starts at the 10. we'll obviously see what happens, because Jeremy O'Connor went off with an injury against Cork, so it's not likely that he starts. Maybe Jack Barry will actually start in the midfield instead. But like, Kerry will need to be patient. I don't think they'll get as much joy going forward as they did against Cork, so they'll need to be a lot more patient on the ball. As long as they don't panic, if they're playing it from side to side and slowing the game down, they'll need to be patient in doing so, because I do think Mayo will probably play the same way against Kerry as well, and I think Mayo could probably cause Kerry a lot of problems going forward with the likes of Ryan O'Donoghue and Tommy Conroy if Kerry do come through this game. So I mean, that's going to be an interesting one. Kerry will need to be patient on the ball. They can't rush their opportunities. And I think as long as they are patient on the ball and they wait for those opportunities and wait for those scoring opportunities, I do think they'll be okay. The midfield battle is going to be another interesting one as well. I mean, Con Kilpatrick, I haven't seen too much of him since he's come into the side this year. I've obviously seen him against Cavan and in some of the championship games this year, but I haven't seen him in too much detail so far. Brian Kennedy's been impressive though, like got a goal against Cavan. He's good at going forward, and like what I was saying before, if Tyrone are going to turn the ball over, probably in like this area of the pitch here, can we do that? Here we go. Probably in this area of the pitch here, they're going to be breaking with pace. And obviously you'd expect Padraig Hampsey to probably be in there winning the ball, Ronan McNamee as well, Peter Hart to be dropping in. And like, if Tyrone are breaking with pace, Brian Kennedy's getting forward. He could be a big player for Tyrone in this game. But personally, I would expect Kerry to probably win the midfield battle. David Moran's improved a lot as the year has gone on, obviously since struggling in that first game against the Dubs. And this is a big game for David Moran because it's against a big side in Tyrone. No disrespect to Cork, Clare or Tipperary, but this is a huge game for him. A game in which he needs to step up, show his leadership. He's one of the few players still in the Kerry side that was a part of the 2014 All-Ireland success. So a huge game for David Moran, a huge game for Kerry in particular, and certainly the midfield battle is going to be a very, very interesting one. The kickouts is certainly going to be interesting. I would expect Shane Ryan. I do think Tyrone will probably concede the short kickout because they'll want to have as many players back as possible so that they can force turnovers. I mean, it will be interesting because if they press too high up and Shane Ryan kicks over and Kerry are left man on man with some of the Tyrone defenders, I mean, I just don't see how Tyrone will be able to stop Kerry that way. So that'd be interesting. And obviously Noel Morgan, I mean, we all seen what he was doing against Monaghan. He was picking up spaces around here and sometimes on the left side and the half-back line. He was almost playing as a cornerback at different stages. Basically just cutting off the space that Rory Beggan was kicking into. And it forced Rory Beggan to kick out over on the sideline at different stages. Now, it will be interesting to see if Noel Morgan does something similar in this game, because like, we've seen the error he made in the league game, and obviously Gavin White was able to lob him from around about 30 to 40 yards. Like, that will be playing in Noel Morgan's mind. He won't want, like, I don't know if he's going to be venturing forward like he did in the Monaghan game, in all honesty. I think it would be very, very risky, and I think Kerry have the players to turn. If Kerry turn Tyrone over in those instances, like if Noel Morgan plays a loose pass, Kerry will punish you. Like, they'll shoot from whatever distance it is, regardless, like whether it's in, within 30 to 40 yards, like they'll shoot from that distance, and they might end up scoring, or they'll move the ball quickly, and they just have so many players that can kick from distance, whereas Monaghan, they had Conor McManus, Jack McCarron, two very good players that can kick from distance, but Kerry have so many players all across the pitch, so that will be an area of concern without doubt for Tyrone. I mean, they'll need to be careful. I'm sure Noel Morgan will want to cut off the spaces for Shane Ryan as well, but I just don't think he'll have the same influence that he did in the Monaghan game, because I just don't think, I think it's way too risky. In terms of Tyrone, I mean, Conor McKenna needs a big game. Matty Donnelly as well. I mean, Matty Donnelly's been brilliant so far this year. Very impressive in the first half. I would expect him to cover so much area of the pitch, and he's going to be a big player for Tyrone. And Conor McKenna, I think, needs to show that kind of similar form to what he showed last year. Was obviously very impressive against Donegal, and certainly if he starts or whether he comes off the bench, he's a player that could really make an impact and make a difference in this game, and he's definitely one worth watching. And certainly his matchup, whether it is Paul Murphy who picks him up or Mike Breen, or whether he even plays in the full forward line, we'll have to wait and see. But it is going to be an interesting matchup, and I think Conor McKenna is definitely one player that could really turn it on for Tyrone in this game. Stephen O'Brien for Kerry as well hasn't really, he hasn't shown that same sort of explosive form that he showed. I remember him in the 2019 final against Dublin, and I thought he was so impressive at just getting forward. Brilliant ball carrier, attacks with so much pace. He might be the paciest footballer when he has the ball in his hands. Like, he might be the quickest, in my opinion. A bit like Jack O'Connor in the hurling. Like, he might be, Stephen O'Brien might be football's version of him. But we just haven't quite seen that since 2019, and he's been in and out of the team and hasn't quite been able to produce that same form as 2 years ago. He's obviously struggled with a couple of injuries as well, but he could be a big player as well, and this game probably won't suit him, in all honesty, with Tyrone retreating, but he could be that outlet at different times as well, and he could be a big player for Kerry, and certainly a player we're watching. And just looking at the matchups, looking at the players on the pitch, it's going to be such an intriguing game. But anyways, I'm going to go with a Kerry victory by 4 points. I do think Tyrone will cause a couple of problems for Kerry, but I think Kerry will just have far too much attacking talent from their full forwards and their half forwards. They're the best team in the country for a reason, in my opinion. And I do think surely now this is going to be Kerry's time. Look, listen, I'd love for Mayo to beat them in an All-Ireland final. I really would, because I want to see Mayo end that 70-year wait that's eluded them for so long, and also delayed this Kerry side, because I do think once David Clifford, Paddy Clifford, Sean O'Shea, who else have you got in there, some of the other young lads like Killian Spillane and whatnot coming through, once they get an All-Ireland, that they'll just be hungry for more, and I think they'll kick on, and they'll have gotten that monkey off their back, and they'll just improve from there. A bit like Dublin in 2011. Dublin finally got over the line. They finally won that All-Ireland. 2 years later won another, and then from there just really, really kicked on and on and on. So I think something similar could happen with Kerry. They could really go through a period of dominance if they win one. And I do think that they'll just have too much for Tyrone, in my opinion. I think Tyrone's situation with COVID as well is still a bit up in the air. Will they have their best team? Will they have their best team on the pitch? I know there's been a bit of a delay since obviously there's been another week delay. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Will they have their best team on the pitch? I don't really know. A lot of question marks, and I think Kerry's bench as well. You're talking about Killian Spillane and Adrian Spillane, Micheál Burns, Tommy Walsh. I just think they'll have too much, and they'll have the players there to make a difference. Tyrone have good players coming off the bench as well. Dereck Canavan, Paul Donaghy as well. I suppose if Kerry are struggling going down the home stretch, I'd love to see it going down the home stretch, maybe 2 or 3 points behind, going into the final 10 minutes. Do they have what it takes to turn it around? A bit like what Mayo done against the Dubs. Do they have that in them? That is a question mark. I feel like they do, but until we see it, we won't really know if they do or don't. So that is going to be very, very interesting, and certainly a lot of questions, a lot of answers. Very much looking forward to it. But like what I said before, I'm going with a 4-point victory for Kerry. I'll stick a score graphic on the screen right now so you can go ahead and have a look. And I'm going to go with Kerry to win the game by 4 points. But anyways, lads, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Do leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you do enjoy this content, do stay tuned for more videos, podcasts, interviews coming soon. And like what I said before, stay tuned. See the live watch along stream. Hopefully we will be able to do it, and I will get back on time from my holidays. But we'll see what happens anyways. And very much looking forward to the game. Sorry, my speech is all over the place because I've been speaking for about an hour and a half because I recorded the video before and now I had to record it again. But anyways, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. My name is Aaron, and I'll see you all later.